In elementary school, we would learn about a new core value every week: kindness, empathy, integrity. Integrity, we were told, is doing the right thing, even when nobody is watching. Of course, there were the obvious examples: don't cheat, don't steal, and even don't skip brushing your teeth. However, as we'll soon see, integrity applies to far more than these elementary aspects of our lives. In the late 18th century, an English thinker by the name of Jeremy Bentham devised one of history's greatest experiments on integrity. Bentham proposed a maximum security prison known as the Panopticon. His prison was unique, as it did not rely on means of physical authority to keep prisoners in line. Instead, Bentham envisioned a surveillance-based design that would deter prisoners from acting out through forms of psychological intimidation. The prison was circular in shape and had multiple floors of cells lining the perimeter walls. In the center lay a watchtower from which guards could view the entirety of each cell. The guards rotated between viewing only a few cells at a time, leaving most of the prison unwatched. The catch, however, is that the prisoners could not see into the watchtower. This meant they never knew when they were actually being watched and had to assume they were under observation at all times. A century later, French philosopher Michel Foucault revisited Bentham's work. He wrote that the Panopticon model internalized surveillance in the minds of the inmates to such a degree that each prisoner had become their own guard. Foucault's theory of power explored two critical components of internalized authority: being visible and unverifiable. The visibility component was the intimidating shadow of the all-seeing watchtower, which had the capability to watch over the inmate's every move. The aspect of unverifiability was the unease and uncertainty in the minds of the prisoners, as they never knew when they were actually being watched. Although no overarching watchtower intrudes on our daily lives, we still tend to obey Foucault's theory of power. For instance, our minds have internalized the existence of police forces and law enforcement to such an extent that we follow laws subconsciously, even when there are no authorities around. For example, when we arrive at a stop sign with no cars in sight, our brains understand that we may still be penalized for disobeying traffic rules. Foucault claimed that authority in modern society has shifted in this sense, and that we are no longer kept in line through means of physical authority, but instead by self-discipline imposed via the fear of consequence. As kids, our watchtower was our parents. We were taught to follow sets of rules, such as tell the truth and use proper manners. When we disobeyed these rules, there were consequences, like no playtime or no dessert. As we grew older, we began to internalize these habits and followed them out of habit rather than because we feared the consequences. Similarly, just as a prisoner in Bentham's Panopticon learned to follow behavioral conduct under the watchful eyes of the guards, our younger selves developed a strong moral code under the umbrella of consequence. All right, let's shift gears for a moment. With a show of hands, how many of you in here have made a New Year's resolution before? Almost all of us, it seems. Now raise your hand again if you've kept that resolution for more than 3 months. We have a couple overachievers in here, but for the most part, we tend to make these resolutions and promises every year that we're going to change and better ourselves. And in the beginning, it works. We're motivated and energized, ready to make change and meet our goals. But it rarely seems to last. Quite frankly, motivation is overrated. Anyone who's truly achieved success probably didn't do it because of motivation, but instead because they thrived in self-discipline. Motivation is the inspiration to make change. It's an exigence, but it's not much more than an idea. Self-discipline, however, is actionable. Self-discipline is pursuing your goals day in and day out, without regards to doubting circumstances. It's what drove late NBA legend Kobe Bryant to work out 3 times a day during the NBA season, often running on fewer than 3 hours of sleep at night. Self-discipline drove General Electric CEO Jeffrey Immelt to work 100-hour work weeks for 24 years straight on his way to becoming one of the world's most successful businessmen. Now, keep in mind, self-discipline is not synonymous with hard work and absurd hours. While the previous 2 examples I've given made incredible time commitments to reach their goals, you'd be amazed by the milestones you can achieve simply by stringing together small commitments. Like any other skill, self-discipline can be developed with practice. Foucault's theory of power taught us that through an authority with visibility and unverifiability, we can internalize habits until they become natural, including self-discipline. To do so, we must shift our mindset. First, we'll create an authority powerful enough to ensure that we do not fall out of line. We'll call this authority failure. Failure is our all-seeing watchtower, capable of imposing its consequences on us if we drift away from our path of discipline. We must view the idea of failure just as the prisoners in Bedlam's Panopticon viewed the watchtower guards, as an authoritarian figure that we strive to avoid at all times. Now that we've established this visible power, let's explore its unverifiability. An interesting hiccup in Bedlam's Panopticon is that prisoners were able to act out without consequence if the guards were not supervising them at the time. Similarly, even after we install our visible power of authority, we still may not face immediate consequences if we are undisciplined. For example, if your goal is to work out every day, you probably won't notice your muscles shrink after missing a day or two in the gym. However, just as a prisoner in the Panopticon who repeatedly disobeyed the rules would almost certainly face punishment, we too would see our success suffer from a pattern of indiscipline. As kids, the moral values that we developed have now become rather instinctive and are quite easy to reproduce on a daily basis. And we must achieve the same with self-discipline. To do so, we have to practice it repetitively and obsessively, day in and day out, until it becomes subconscious, rather than a manual effort. Quite frankly, this is not always easy, and there is no magic formula to this. Even after we install a mindset of internal Panopticism, there will still be days where we simply don't feel like staying the course. This is because our brains are hardwired to seek instant gratification, and when we go long periods of time working hard with little reward, this isn't met, and our minds may tell us to give up. To combat this, I like to create small, achievable goals that not only keep our instant gratification complex satisfied, but foster the development of self-discipline as we consistently string together achievements. If there's one thing that you should take away from this talk, it's that moral values are not just how you treat others. They're about how you treat yourselves. Honesty, for example, is not just telling the truth. It's about staying true to yourself and asking, am I really working hard enough? Being kind is not just about being nice to others. It's about being kind enough to put yourself in a position for success. And most importantly, having integrity is not just doing the right thing when nobody is watching. It's having the self-discipline to push yourself in the dark, to fear failure lurking in the shadows, and to understand that in order to be successful under the bright lights, you must learn to be comfortable in the dark. Thank you.